Hey everybody, welcome back to Event About It. This is the Dynamic Dialogue After Show, and I'm your host, Megan Martin. And I'm here today with Martin Fretwell, the founder of Event Driven Growth. Now, this after show is going to be a little bit different because today we're officially crossing the pond and collaborating with Martin's podcast, Event Driven Growth. So you're going to be co-releasing this episode on each other's brands. Which feels very on brand, and considering we spent an entire podcast episode talking about compounding value. So I'm excited to co-release this with you. And instead of a quick wrap up, we're going to go deeper, more nuanced, even more real talk in this debate format. So Martin, set the stage for us. Tell everybody what we're doing in this very special edition of the Dynamic Dialogue After Show and the Event Driven Growth podcast, and why this conversation needs to live on both feeds.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome everybody to a special episode of a new-ish segment called Yeah, But, which is a very, very light-hearted debate segment where I invite a guest with a particular perspective on something about the events industry. And whether I agree, believe, or not, I will take the exact opposite opinion and try and construct a counter-argument. And we will go back and forth to see who wins, because it is a fight to the death.
I like it.
And yeah, so I'm excited to get started. So I guess my big question for you as we get started is, what is your big opinion that you're bringing to the debate today?
Well, we've been talking a lot about trade shows. And you and I have talked about how you are not a fan, and I am a fan. I think trade shows are important. I think they have a place and a time. But I also think that we've been doing them wrong. And so that's where I want to challenge your thinking.
Yes. So for added context to that, I have made this statement before. I would like to kill the trade show industry. I would like it to die by offering alternatives to it. So would you prefer to jab or defend?
I'll defend. I'll defend the trade shows.
Okay, so I
feel like I should be suited up, like we're about to walk into a courtroom or something, and I should have like my best Elle Woods like pink suit on, like ready to go.
I love that. What a fantastic reference. No, I'm glad that's not the case, because I would, like, I've not won any of these debates yet, and I've got no chance if you did that. Summon your inner Elle Wood. As an industry, we are particularly poor at innovation. And I think post-pandemic, the trade show is exactly the same as it was. And I think that keeping the trade show alive, it's like the safety blanket that we don't want to remove in order to innovate. It's like, if we keep doing that, then we don't have to do the scary new thing of learning like what people want from events in the future. So I actually think that trade shows are a big blocker in event industry innovation.
And are you saying, when you say trade show, let's set the scene for what this means. Are we talking simply trade show, or we're talking trade show and conference? So a show that has education, maybe there's breakout sessions, press releases, there's all these other components to it, and there's a trade show, or there's a trade show and a conference. Or are you simply talking trade show only floors, there's no education or anything around it?
Yeah, basically exhibitions. Okay. Yeah, so and I would add my own caveat to that, and because I think we are generally talking about non-physical product exhibitions, because I think, if you're I'm guilty as anybody. Like when virtual reality came out, I tried on one of the headsets and I was immediately buying a new PC and a virtual reality headset, and it's like there's a place for physical products, but when it's software and things like that, nope.
Okay.
Yeah. That's my
So
jam.
physical product trade shows you're for. So
Hmm.
you wouldn't necessarily want those to go away. But if it's like a software show and it's trade show and demo booths and all that, get rid of it.
Precisely. Yeah.
What would you want to replace it with? Like if they're not innovating and you think they're the same as pre-pandemic, what would you replace it with?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. Allow them to die and allow the white space to be filled with innovation, with something new. And the whole point of innovation is it doesn't exist yet. So, right. But you have to kind of create the space for something new to fill it. And I think the biggest problem is that like the trade shows, the exhibitions are the safety blanket.
I mean, I completely disagree. I think there's a time and place for that because even though software is not a physical product, I want to see it and talk to a human, not on a computer. And I also don't want to spend my days on a screen. And a lot of these, let's say SaaS trade show conference formats, there's so much else that goes on that that's where I get to know my partners and vendors. And there's so much relationship building that goes on where I think some of it is just a miss. You're saying you're burning through money. I don't think we're optimizing our presence at these trade shows. So I don't think they should go away, but I think people have to start thinking about them different. If you're going to spend all the money to, let's say, have a massive 40 by 40 booth at one of these SaaS shows. So let's think about like a cybersecurity show, for example. And we've got these huge CrowdStrike, for lack of better names in the industry. Like, let's just say CrowdStrike has a 40 by 40 booth. They're bringing in a host. They're running education in their booth. Maybe there's a podcasting area where they're going to capture some content. And then they also have all their demos. Well, how they show up to that show, they are not utilizing everything there. Like, I think having a podcast, if you have a place in your marketing stack for live videos, podcasting things, then that should be present and utilize some of the square footage to get content that you can use later and say, here's what we're seeing at the show. Like, use it as a thought leadership moment. And maybe you're interviewing some of your AEs and salespeople. And if you're going to spend the time to have a host and do education, tell people that you're doing education. I see it all the time. There's these big, beautiful boards and LED walls showing your schedule, but I don't see that till I get there. Like, maybe I want to factor that into my planning. So market that ahead of time of who's going to be in your booth, who's going to be speaking, what are the topics, come learn more. Oh, and then get a demo there. But so many times I see these companies like stack all these demos. People aren't really buying SaaS on the show floor. It's discovery phase, it's top of funnel, and we should treat it as such. And then the follow-ups, I think I read some crazy statistic of like 60 or 70% of leads from trade shows never get followed up on. Well, there's hidden opportunity right there. Just follow up with your leads. And like, if you know what they're looking for, then you have a better chance of actually closing business because now you have intent signals from your live experience and participating in this trade show. So I don't think we should get rid of them. I think people should still show up to them. I think how you activate there is just very different. And like the giveaways are all great, but then you just fill your lead list with a bunch of people who are just trying to get your Labubu or your watch or whatever it is that you're giving away at your booth. Like, it's not quality, it's quantity at that point. And we shouldn't be measuring on quantity.
I think that if you have to rely on gimmicks at your booth, then you don't have a good enough story within your organization to be worth doing a booth.
I do agree with that.
Because I think, like the whole puppy playpen booth trade show things, hate that.
Same.
Absolutely detest that. Because it's so gimmicky, and it makes me wonder if like chicken and egg, right, is, if you're using gimmicks and everything like that at the booth to generate leads, then of course 60% is not going to follow it up on because 60% is going to be garbage.
That is true.
So,
Yeah.
like, I think one statistic potentially leads into the other. I mean, that's the funny thing with statistics. Unless you know the context within the statistic, it's like,
Yes.
you know,
And I
what
always
is
want
it?
to
What is
dig
it telling
into
us?
like the underlying,
Right?
like who did you survey? Who did you ask? What was the market? Like I want to see all of that like metadata out of your surveys.
Yeah. I remember once being at, because we were talking about cybersecurity, I remember once being at a cybersecurity event ages ago in London. Oh God, it was an era where the booth babes idea was still around. Oh,
It's
just
still around.
horrible,
That
horrible
hasn't
times.
gone away like at
That's
all.
what I'm talking about. Just let the
It's
whole
still
industry die.
around.
Let it all die. But for I remember seeing these two booths, two huge booths, two big players in cybersecurity, and they both right next to each other, and you could tell that like all of the money was going into ego. It was all going into beat the competition next to them. And by the way, to anybody listening here, that is exactly what trade show practitioners and producers do. They play you off on the other. Do not let ego be part of your decision making process, because that's how they make their money. I know, I did it. I've manipulated you all in the past. I'm not that same person, so I apologize for my history, but it is very true. And they had LCD screens, because it was back in the day, on the front of their booths, and it had like number of cyber threats stopped in like a ranking, and they had themselves top and their competitor right next to them bottom of the list. Both had the same booth, same table, same statistic, but just different results. And I was like, nobody here is helping the audience. Nobody here is helping the audience. I remember speaking to one of the creators of one of the booths and saying how they'd hired a Lamborghini to drive some of the like the CISOs around in, but they were just getting students and things like that to make the request. It was like, mate, I can't, like, nobody can help you if you're making decisions like that.
I mean, that is true. I do remember a show recently where the one of the exhibitors couldn't get space to hold meetings, so they rented a bus and branded the bus, and you would have these like mobile meetings, and you would get a tour of the city and get out of the convention area while you were having this meeting. And it became like the biggest buzz of the trade show floor because they actually were taking people outside of the conference, and everybody wanted to see this really cool bus where these meetings were being held. But the company standed firm and said, no, like, if you don't do business with us, you don't get on the bus. Like, you have to have an appointment. It was qualified, it was quality meetings.
I think
And
I remember
then,
hearing about this bus. Actually,
yeah,
I think I've heard about this bus. I think, yeah,
I thought it was the coolest way. And like, that's where innovation at trade shows, I think, comes from. Like, I don't think we need to throw trade shows away. Like, I think there is innovation, but it's innovation coming from frustration because I think there's so many guidelines and rules around trade shows that haven't really evolved with the market and what people are asking for. So brands are having to get creative on how to show up at these shows to get their business done in the way that works for them, because one booth size doesn't fit all, and you end up with a bus that's driving executives around a city because they couldn't find space to hold their meetings.
yeah. Um, and this actually kind of like comes to like probably my next argument of killing the trade show is that like because I love seeing suppliers, vendors, whoever's going to kind of be buying these booths, innovate and create these kind of like cool ideas. Like I deliberately don't play in the trade show industry, so like I didn't actually know that there was that many kind of stipulations, guidelines, guardrails behind the production, which makes it even more challenging. But I think like all of the cool stuff that you can do in a booth, you can do in more suitable environments. Like
Like what?
the pod
Like what?
like the podcasting thing, like content creation. I just feel like, there are conferences when you can do that. You don't need the trade show for that. I just can't see I can't see anything that's specific trade show. Like, I mean, I think you can add things to your booth. You can add things to the trade show, but I think like, yeah, I mean, you could do them in other places. Like, I don't think there's anything that is specifically trade show like that creates its own value, if I'm making any sense with that statement.
I mean, I guess a little bit, but where I would challenge you, so okay, let's take the podcasting example, right? Like we give some square footage of our booth to this podcasting area so we can capture content and extend the life of our investment, right? And we can, but part of why that works is because at the trade show are some of the key guests and ICPs and people you want to have on your podcast. And it's so much more engaging to do it in person with all the hustle and bustle of the trade show behind you. Like it just automatically changes the feel and the content that comes out of it when it's an in-person conversation. And you can't really do that at a conference or another format. I think the trade show space is the perfect place for it because you also can capitalize on the sometimes tens of thousands of people that are there. And maybe there's a really interesting guest or someone you've been trying to engage with that's going to be there that you can be like, hey, it's the easiest way to get someone to come into your booth is like, do you want to come on the podcast? Do you want to record a story? Do you want to see this education? And you can't really do that in a lot of other formats than at a trade show. And at a conference, there's not really the space to do that. Because if you do, then you have to sponsor and you might not get as many people and eyeballs on what you're doing. And so I think the trade show space just allows for a bigger imprint when capitalized appropriately, when planned and executed with a strategy that like this is the intent, or at least one of the intents, maybe not the whole purpose. And you can't really do that at a conference.
I want to talk briefly about the audience in trade shows. Because, and the reason being, so like there's going to be a bit of context, which we might edit some of the context out, but I'm giving you all of the context because you're the guest and I feel that's appropriate. So I used to run the type of conferences that used to do the one-to-one business meetings. And not very good, if I'm honest. Not a great model.
I think they're an amazing model, and I think more people should do these with trade shows specifically. They are just done so poorly.
So badly.
So poorly. Like, if there's room for innovation, that's the first place I would start with trade shows, is the hosted buyer one-on-one meeting scheduling.
I actually think, but I do kind of question whether it's possible. But anyway, it's so I used to do those, right? So, and they never used to work particularly well. So I don't generally kind of like recommend them. And I remember speaking to a prospect, not a prospect, they were a client because they sponsored one of the executive dinners that I ran. And they said like the executive dinner was good, but they didn't quite get what they wanted from it. Totally fine, happens sometimes. But they did say they were getting a lot of value from the one-to-one business meeting model, which is a very rare thing that I hear from. And so I kind of like went down this kind of like huge rabbit hole of trying to think of like, why is that the case? And it made me think of like two things. So first of all, they're a brand new kind of concept all around AI and coaching and training. And like when you listen to it, it's like, oh, this is very cool. I really like this. So it's got that kind of like wow factor feeling, but it's also a land and expand model. So people can buy a very small version within their team and expand. So all of a sudden it kind of made sense why, if you have something like that and you're doing one-to-one business meetings with people for 30 minutes, 35 minutes, or whatever it is, like you've got that wow factor and you've got a very easy way for people to buy. It's not like they have to fully uproot systems in order to kind of use this model. So I was like, oh, that's very cool. And I think about like that for the trade show idea. And organizations that I work with, they tend to want like enterprise clients at a VP and above level. And I'm like, are they really attending trade shows like at that level? Or should the trade show be for something like, is it more valuable for like if you target SMEs, you know, what like level, like job title level, seniority level, company size, and things like that in terms of the attendees that attend trade shows? Should that be more niche?
No, but here's what I have found is that the VP C-suite level, they're not really stepping on the trade show floor. And if they are, it's not to take meetings. All of their meetings are happening outside of the trade show, outside of the convention center. So over a coffee, a meal, or on a bus, they're having meetings. And part of why the trade shows work is because they can go to a trade show for 2 days and have every meeting they needed to have, where if they were at home, that would have been scheduled over months and months, which they can get it all done in 2 days. But the trade show floor should not, in my opinion, shouldn't really be optimized for the VPs and C-suites because they're not even getting on the trade show floor. And that's why to maximize and have the best experience at a trade show, all the work is done ahead of time. If you're waiting to book meetings once you get on site, you've already missed the boat. Everyone's walking in there pretty much already planned with their appointments. So if you're not doing pre-outreach and trying to book those meetings before someone even leaves their house, then you're not going to get them. And if you're not giving options, if that is your ICP to meet with the C-suites and top of the food chain, they're not going to take a meeting in your booth. Like, very rarely does that happen. So that's where you have to get creative and innovative and think about the strategy. Maybe you need a bus. Maybe you have a smaller booth that is the discovery phase for the, smaller businesses, the doers, the activators at the company. But then if you want buy-in from higher up the food chain, you've got to do something different because they're not going to hit your booth.
Yeah. I'm trying not to like what you've just said because I'm supposed to be the other side of this intense life or death situation. So I will refrain the comment for the summary phase at the end. But I've kind of done a lot of attacking here, and you've done a lot of defending. So I would like to kind of switch it up, and I would like you to jab at me for my perspective on killing the trade shows. If you're open to going on the attack,
I think you kind of a little bit made my jab at you at the beginning of, for someone who doesn't work in the trade show space every day, and I'm not saying I work in trade shows every single day, but I do work in the trade show space enough to know and see the value and how people need to evolve models to make it successful. And again, we're not talking like product, like feel, touch, buyer shows. Like these, we're in hypothetical talking like a SaaS trade show. I think people just don't optimize them well, but it's full drama here. But like for someone who doesn't even work in this space to say that we should get rid of a space, like, come on, man. Like, you don't even work in trade shows.
Yes. And that's why, like, I feel it would be.
This is why you don't work in trade shows.
Yeah. I feel it would be a little bit disingenuous to work in trade shows, but also like want them to die. But yeah, it's kind of like one of those. Yeah, it's a dramatic phrase. But we both practice work on LinkedIn, and if you're not dramatic, if you're not thinking like such, if you're not saying at least once a week that X is dead, then are you really even a LinkedIn content producer?
I mean, they rage bait. The algorithm wants rage bait.
The algorithm wants it.
Yeah.
We're just doing.
I refer to it.
Hate the player.
I refer to it as feeding the beast, right? You gotta rage bait every once in a while to feed the beast. I mean, that's my only thing. I think your viewpoint of trade shows is a little bit narrower, and I think trade shows in the U.S. I mean, also coming from Europe, I think trade shows in the U.S. look a little bit different. Now I say all that. I don't think they should be killed or do away with them, but I think there is desperate need for some innovation. And I think brands and sponsors and people that are going and participating in these shows and attendees as well. Like they're asking for different. The way we approach trade shows is very different now. And in the age of technology and AI, the thought that you can't actually match me with people that I want to meet with and go to a hosted buyer and have the meeting is a bigger innovation moment for me than getting rid of them. I think they have
Yeah.
to evolve and they haven't fully evolved yet. But I think it's coming, and I think trade shows serve a huge value in the market.
Okay, so that is, I think, the debate side. As we move into conclusion phase to see if we perhaps convinced each other of maybe a little shifting in perspective. We'll see what happens there. I was going to kind of like say one more thing about kind of trade shows, but I feel like this bit is better for the summary because it's kind of not really the anti-trade show argument, but it is a big frustration that I have with the trade show model is the capitalist nature of it, I suppose, for want of a better phrase. More money, bigger booth. Like, if you're a small player, you can't afford the big booth. You get a small booth in the corner, which ends up being a complete waste of money because these big people with the more money are creating bigger experience. And it just feels like, when you're playing a video game and someone decides to buy all of the gear right at the start when you're still trying to do all of the side quests to get the gear. And I just feel like that's a little bit grotesque in a way, I suppose.
But isn't that the nature of all, like, that's not unique to trade shows? And I think if you're this little fish in a big pond, it gives you so much opportunity to be more creative. And I think some of the bigger booths should prioritize smaller spaces and spend that money elsewhere because I think why and how they show up has changed. And I don't know that spending the money on the big 40 by 40 double deckers, certainly if you have the budget, feel free. But I think being a small fish in a big pond forces you to get really creative. And I think some of the best innovation comes from those folks. Like, yeah, it's
Agreed.
nice to
Agreed.
see all the big splashy stuff. And certainly those are aspirational goals. But when you don't have the bandwidth or the financials to do something like that, I don't know, getting scrappy and getting down in there and having to really force yourself to get creative to be seen, that's the stuff I live for. Like, I think that's the most fun place to be.
Yeah, yeah. And I really liked, like, one thing that you said that definitely swayed me was when we were kind of like talking about that audience, because, as everybody knows now that there's never a single decision maker. You need multiple champions within an organization to get like any kind of remotely complex deal over the line. And I love the idea of like utilizing the trade shows, like because the one thing that trade shows do have going for them, it is a large collection of people all in one place. And I love that for work, for like community and stuff like that, and bringing people together. And the idea of kind of like setting your meetings, but also then making sure that you have that funnel for maybe manager level people to get interested in the product. So then you have multiple touch points within an organization, kind of seeing the value and starting the journey with your organization. And I think that's a powerful approach. I like that.
Does that mean I swayed you that you don't want trade shows?
Look, I don't
anymore?
win these debates. I do not. That is just the way things have been going. And I'm absolutely okay with that. But because it's not about kind of like going for a black and white, but I'm curious. Did I highlight anything for you that maybe you hadn't thought about before?
I mean, no, but I do respect your argument.
God damn it.
I do respect
I'm
your
going to have to
argument
cut this
that
podcast out because I'm just getting smashed week and week. Like, it's not good for my ego. Um,
because I mean, you're not wrong. Like trade shows really haven't changed that much pre-pandemic, like since the world shut down. And I think a lot of conferences are getting innovative, and I think there are a handful of shows that are changing things up and trying to push the boundaries of it. And I think people are starting to figure it out, but the more it goes both ways. Like exhibitors and sponsors of these trade shows have to force organizers and show up different and ask them different questions. So your point is valid that the pre 2020 way of doing trade shows doesn't fit the market as much anymore. Now, buyer shows is totally different. Like come here, touch, feel, see the products, place your orders, move. That's not necessarily what we're talking about here because I think that format could use
that's
some
where
evolution,
they
but
came
not
from,
nearly
right?
as
That's how
yeah,
it
not
started,
nearly as much as I think like SaaS type trade shows work. And I think brands are asking for different and they have to keep pushing because the organizers will show up if people ask. Otherwise, it ain't broke, we're not going to fix it kind of approach. Like the organizers are thinking everything's fine unless you tell them, I need more, I need different, help me get there. And it has to be much more consultative as opposed to checking boxes off an order form. So
Yeah,
your
I
point
think,
is valid. You did not change my mind, but like I do want to acknowledge like you're not wrong in your thinking.
yeah. Um, and I think that's the way it has to be. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit more cynical skeptic of the organizers. I mean, I don't know a lot of organizers, but when I've worked on that side of the element, it was very much kind of like, if we're getting the money, then I don't care kind of thing. It was pretty rotten, I suppose. And that's not speaking for everybody. That's literally just my personal experience. But I do think that either like money is the biggest feedback mechanism. And if we keep buying the same mundane stuff, then that is what will continue. So I think it is unfortunately down to the suppliers to push the innovation. It's not going to come from the conference providers. It's up to the suppliers to make that push forwards. I'm sorry, suppliers. I'm sorry. You've got more work to do, I'm afraid.
I mean, they need to advocate for what they want and don't take the surface value, but also there are some show organizers out there that are pushing that, but you need to know, like, just because they're not asking doesn't mean they're unhappy. And at some point they are going to show you with their dollars and just stop coming to your show, or they're going to downgrade their booth size. They're going to downgrade their sponsorships. And that's the subtle way of telling you this doesn't work for me anymore. And so you should pay attention to those non-direct signals about your show. And I think it's going to take both people coming together, and the shows that are winning right now are doing that. And they're working very collaboratively with the exhibitors on how to change the format of the shows.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you very much for joining me. As always, I will get back into the gym, train, and try and come back and improve on my next debate. I absolutely will, I promise. But thank you very much for joining me, Megan. That was very, very, very cool. It was a little bit more intense than some of the previous, but I like it because we dug deep.
We did.
We dug deep, and that's the important thing.
That's all the time we have today. Thanks for tuning in to another Event About It after show, because the best conversations start after the show ends. Until next time, stay curious.